do you say your name? Is it Lamana? Is that how you say that?
It's Lamana.
Lamana. Wow.
Yes. Hi, John. Nice to meet you. This is so exciting. Thank you so
Me
much for
too.
having me on here. I just want to say that I love your work, your ministry. This is awesome. And so this dream, I'm sort of went through the archives to find one because I dream almost every single night.
That's so
And
cool.
yeah, and dreams, even before I knew the Lord, I had dreams that would come to pass, and I would just, be blown away, like, how's this happening? So now that I really know God and that I'm part of this, I'm just like, wow, this is crazy. God is really speaking to me. So this is from July. And the dream is I'm in an SUV. It's a car.
Mhm.
I'm in the passenger seat. There's somebody driving. And I have a rabbit, and I'm trying to get my rabbit. And I actually don't have a rabbit as a pet, but I'm frantically looking for my rabbit, and there's all these animals running around outside this vehicle. I see different rabbits, but they're not my rabbit. And all of a sudden, then it begins to rain really, really hard. My rabbit comes running. I see him, and it's like I had a knowing in that moment. I knew he would come back. Um, there's another animal that gets in the car, and a third animal wants to get in, but we begin to drive off and we run him over on accident. And I look over, and he was actually a cat. And that's the whole dream. And it kind of gives me a feel like it's a Noah's Ark kind of thing. I
Mhm.
don't know, but I would just love to know what that means.
I kind of had that feeling too. And when you said rabbit, there were a couple of things that I heard. Um, First of all, the idea of rabbits represent radical multiplication,
Okay. Okay.
reproduction. So I think that's cool, which can represent fruitfulness. It could represent a ton of kids as well, too.
Okay. Okay.
But representing fruitfulness, particularly in your life, the idea of multiplication, the idea of what's called fecundity. Fecundity is the idea of having kids who have kids, or it's like birthing something that's already pregnant.
Okay.
It's the idea of rapid multiplication.
Okay.
And by the way, just so you guys know, I remember when I was a kid, at one point, my mom and dad, for Christmas morning, they saved the best gift till last, and we opened it up, and I don't know if it was a stuffed rabbit or whatever, and my dad announced to my sister and I, who were all of like 13 and 12 years old, they said the rabbit died,
Oh.
and we're like, what the heck are you talking about? Whose rabbit? What rabbit? We don't own a rabbit. Why did he die? And who the heck cares? I thought this was Christmas. And and apparently, like way back in the day, a test for pregnancy is they would take, the urine of a woman that they thought was pregnant, and they would inject it into a rabbit. And if the rabbit died, it meant that the woman was pregnant. And so that was their way of letting us know we were going to be, a brother and a big brother and sister. And
Oh my
of
gosh.
course, we needed the explanation because telling a 12 or 13-year-old the rabbit died meant nothing to us. Um, but I just think it's interesting because, again, rabbits represent rapid increased fruitfulness and multiplication. They also represent luck,
Okay.
the idea of a rabbit's foot. Now, a rabbit has 4 feet, so
Yeah.
the idea of luck, which is not something necessarily that a lot of Christians, particularly in the prophetic, put a whole lot of weight on. But I think if you interpret luck as basically the world might describe luck, what we might see it is a gift of favor that somebody carries or somebody walks in. And in particular, the idea of four, again, represents favor for the nations. So again, we don't shy away from the word luck because we don't believe in luck and we don't like the word luck. I think they're just trying to describe a concept that they don't have a grid for. And if they don't believe in God, they don't necessarily know to say, well, this is the favor of God in your life. But
Hmm.
it's the same thing. It means open doors. It means the idea of having a level of things going your way as if you had a lucky rabbit's foot, which again we know is garbage compared to the favor of God in your life.
Yeah.
Um, so you're in your SUV, you're not driving. Do you know who was driving?
No, there's a male that's in the driver's seat, but I don't. I
Was it
it
like
was like
your
a very
husband or
pardon.
was it your husband?
No, I don't have a husband.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Was it like a pastor? Was it a male leader?
It
Did you get
was a
any sense
male,
of?
but I don't know who he is because my whole focus in the dream is I'm looking at all these animals running around and I'm trying to find my rabbit because I need him to get in the car.
Okay, so you had your door open
Hmm.
and you saw all these animals and you were waiting for your rabbit in
Hmm.
particular to come and hop in the car so your rabbit would be safe.
Yeah, yeah. And then other animals started. There was another animal that hopped in, and then a third animal tried to get in. But as he was trying to get in, we were driving off, and we run him over. And I looked back, and he was actually a cat. He wasn't a rabbit at all.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. So the idea of a cat, when you said he ran over the cat, the first thing I heard is, well, the cat has 9 lives. So I felt like obviously this is a figurative world that we're talking about with this dream.
Hmm.
So the idea of a cat having 9 lives, right, is less than if you ran over your rabbit, which would be tragic because it was obviously something near and dear to your heart. The other thing that I really find interesting is I believe, just again, as you said, rabbit, there was just a flood of things that came to my mind. One was rapid reproduction. Two was the idea of luck or favor, favor for the nations, 4 rabbits' feet, right? And then three was the idea of follow the white rabbit,
Mm.
which again is a line from the Matrix, Matrix One. Are you familiar with the Matrix?
I think I've seen the first one
Okay.
a long time ago.
So in our field and dreams, when we get like really onto a dream or a revelation, and we end up finding something that like, well, this was like George Washington.
Hmm.
And then it's like, well, I don't really know that much about George Washington other than he was the first president. And so we begin to what we call go down the rabbit hole, which
Okay.
is to seek out the revelation. And that's what happens in the movie The Matrix is he got this message, Neo did, follow the white rabbit, which means go with these people. He went with these people to a place, and it was there that he met a contact that he was supposed to meet that took him on this entire journey that changed his whole life.
Wow.
So the idea of following the white rabbit is really interesting because this was kind of the opposite. You weren't going down a rabbit hole. You were wanting the rabbit to come on board with you. Really, you wanted the rabbit to follow you.
Hmm.
You wanted to get the rabbit in the car. So that's why I feel like it has to do more with, well, it has to do with the 3 things. It has to do with the favor of God in your life. It has to do with rapid fruitfulness and reproduction. And it has to do with the idea of revelation
Hmm.
because they're called rabbit holes because they're dug by rabbits, right? They're
Hmm.
holes that rabbits live in.
Hmm.
So you want the rabbit to live with you. So if the
Hmm.
rabbit lives with you, it's your rabbit, right? Then you have that. And it's the idea of the rabbit going down a rabbit hole is the idea of seeking out further knowledge. Obviously, if you actually go down the rabbit hole and you catch the rabbit, it means you've achieved the goal. You've sought what you were after. So if the idea, like another layer is if the rabbit gets in the car and the rabbit lives with you, then it's the idea that you've captured or you have that inherent gift of knowledge and revelation that you've sought when you would go down a rabbit hole.
Hmm.
So all of these things are good things.
Yeah.
They're
What
the
about the
idea.
rain?
While the rain is just represents kind of a tumultuous time. I mean, rain isn't, animals live outside. So rain isn't deadly to animals per se. Um, but it's just the idea of part of the cycles of what we're going through. But rain can represent, obviously, it rains when the sky is cloudy. It can represent a dark time. It can represent a storm, depending on the intensity of rain. It can also represent a cleansing. It represents something is going on in the world that you want to get something out of the elements of the world and have it safe with you.
Wow.
And so there's all these other animals running around, which are presumably pets of other people, right?
I'm
Or
not sure. There's just a lot of animals, and for some reason, I needed to get my rabbit back in the car. But then all of a sudden, the vehicle started becoming, a place that these animals were trying to get into to get shelter. But we were ready to get out of there, whatever the situation was. It was a very short dream, and a dream where it happened so fast, and I just remember being so frantic that I really just needed to get my rabbit. And it's interesting that you said a white rabbit, because it was a white rabbit. My rabbit was white, but the cat was black.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like the cat represents a couple of things. It represents curiosity. Curiosity killed the cat. Obviously, the cat came into the metron of the car, was actually underneath the car, got ran over, was in a place that it shouldn't be. It killed the cat. Yeah, the idea of the black cat and the white rabbit are both in the Matrix. I think that's really interesting too.
Yeah.
I think you need to watch. I would go back and just as a kind of a homework assignment, watch The Matrix, the first one again. Well, actually, if it was me, I'd go watch all four. But
okay, I'll watch The Matrix.
Start with the first one.
Tonight.
But the fourth one just came out, 12, 22, 21, which is a palindrome, which means something if you're a decoder in the hidden language of God. It means something to all of us that are in spiritual intelligence. But the idea of the black cat and white rabbit they tend to be two things that are almost in the realm of pets. They're like opposites. Mm-hmm. Cats tend to be independent. They tend to be curious. Rabbits tend to be, fluffy and cuddly and something that you want to hold on to. And they're not as elusive. There's something that I think you more want to hold on to and protect than a cat. But obviously the black and white thing, white representing purity, representing the idea of something coming from God or heaven. Black representing, black cats can represent black magic, can represent darkness. And again, it's not the color black, but it's just what black represents, in particular in this type of thing. If it was a white cat, it would be a completely different symbol than a black cat. But because we think of black cats in relation to bad luck, which is interesting, and like not having favor, and the idea of witchcraft and all of those things. Again, I just feel like it's a kind of a basic symbol of a black cat. But the idea of the black cat can also be the idea of witchcraft on an assignment against you in particular, or you and yours, meaning yours would be you and this white rabbit. And again, I believe the white rabbit is something that you desire in your life. It's the idea of reproduction, of obviously of a relationship, but it's the idea of in a group of people or in a community of people having a level of ongoing rapid fruitfulness. Is the idea of having favor, and as we talked about earlier, favor in the nations of the world. So that's all the nations. And then, of course, the idea of having the revelation with you of the things that you're seeking, having literally the answers to the things that you're seeking, and having them there with you safe in the car, that they're not washed away, they're not exposed to the elements, they're not something that the world can steal from you. They're with you. But it's also interesting the setting that you're in, because the setting that you're in is you're not driving. You're in kind of somebody else's vehicle, which could just mean, again, the idea that whether you work for somebody else or whatever position that you're in your life, whether you're living with somebody, whatever it is there's a level, I believe, of invitation for you to be fruitful in a place where you're not necessarily in the driver's seat. And you can have the favor of God on your life, the abundant fruitfulness, the rapid reproduction, and the answers that you seek, even if you're not in the driver's seat. Which means a lot of times I think when we see that we're looking for something or searching for something, man, I want to be more fruitful, or man, I want to get these answers. We think, well, I need to be in the driver's seat so I can steer where I'm going to go. And God is saying, no, it doesn't have to be that way. It can happen right now where you're at, in the condition that whatever the situation is, in the situation that you're in.
Yeah. Wow.
So actionable intelligence is to continue to seek and find wisdom, because the white rabbit represents purity and wisdom. And because of that purity and wisdom, it represents the favor of God, and it represents abundant fruitfulness. Wow. So continue to take hold of it, basically, because that's what you're doing, right? It jumps up into the car, you take hold of it, you shut the door, which means you're shutting out all other options. You're getting it protected and away from the storm. You're holding it close to you. Like it says when it talks about the revelation that Mary got, that she was going to birth the Savior, it says she treasured these things in her heart. Again, it's the idea of holding close and kind of keeping them to yourself. And it's all those things. So fascinating dream.
Thank you so much. Thank you. This has been awesome. Okay.
Yeah.
God bless you.
You too. Thanks for sharing.
All right. No problem.